Okay guys, I'm going to show you guys how to take off. So, the first thing you got to do before any takeoff, after your pre-flight check, is you got to push the primer and lock it 3 times. And then, after that, then what you do before you start the master switch and the ignition, you're supposed to yell out, clear, or prop clear. Then, after that, you turn on the master switch. Then, although I don't have the key, thank goodness, then what you do is you'd start the primer and the ignition right here, which, as you can see, is in the start position right there. Then, what you do is you immediately hold your brakes so that the aircraft doesn't start to roll on its own. You want to adjust to 1,000 RPM, and before you taxi, you call out to traffic, Andrews traffic, Cessna, November 46261, taxiing to the active runway, which could be at runway either 13 or 31. So while you're taxiing, you want to keep aligned with the center line of both the taxiways and the runway. And then when you finally get to the end of the runway, you get to the area off of the runway, which is where we do our pre-flight checks. So while you're there, what you will do is you will test your flight controls, test both of your rudder pedals, and then press the brakes. And your flight control surfaces, such as the aileron. And then what you will do is then you will run your throttle up to 1,000 RPM. I'm sorry, 1,700 RPM. And you will then press the carburetor key to notice a slight drop. You don't want it to be more than 250 RPM. Then you push it back in. Then you press both the left and right cycle mags, although you want to see a small drop. And then after that, then what you will do is you will then pull back to make sure that it doesn't die completely. Then also what we do is we call green, 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 which is where we check the oil temperature to make sure it's in the green, check the oil pressure to make sure it's in the green, and we also check our vacuum indicator right here. Although it's off right now, it should be in the green. Then also you check to make sure your airspeed's correct, your artificial horizon's lined up with the ground. Make sure our altimeter is set to 668. Make sure our magnetic bearing is correct. And then make sure your term coordinator is correct, and make sure the ball's in the middle. Make sure your compass is correct. So if you were to take off from runway 13, then you would align it to 13. So I'm going to do here. Or if you were to take off from runway 31, excuse me, then what you do is, whoa, wee. Just kidding. I'm just kidding. So, then what you do is you line up with runway 31. Now let's put it back to its position, to its original. Oops, second. All right. And then you want to make sure your vertical speed indicator is at 0. So if it was at right there, that would mean a 500 foot per minute ascend. If it was down here, it's a 500 foot per minute descend. And then before takeoff, make sure your trim tab is set. Make sure that it's all lined up, which you want it to be right here with that little white dot right there. And then make sure all your circuit breakers are in. Make sure that your transponder is correct, and then make sure that your amplifier. Just amplifier. I'm sorry. That your amp meter is checking that it's slightly charging. Then before you take off, you radio tower and say Andrews traffic, Cessna 261 is departing on runway 31. In this case, let's just say 31 for the heck of it. So then what you will do is then you will push the throttle forward, and immediately you will feel this surge of power just going throughout the aircraft, and the aircraft is then really excited to get into its natural environment, which is the air. So while you're rolling, you'll see your airspeed increase, and right as you reach 55 knots, which is 55 nautical miles per hour, then what you will do is then you will gently pull back on the stick, and you will rotate, as it's called. And then once you're airborne, what you do is, after you're clear of the runway, then you set the trim up to adjust for the climb. And yeah, that is how you take off.